Now look, I think we've already established that the Yamaha Tenere 700 is one of the best, if not the best, adventure bikes to ride off-road. I've ridden it extensively at the Adventure Experience and also the excellent World Raid Edition, and they really do, both of them, flatter the rider. But thing is, what about the other side of adventure riding, which is more the motorway work and the weekends away? Well, that's exactly what this Explore Edition, which is new for 2024, sets out to do. It's got a few choice modifications that are meant to extend its long distance capabilities. So is it any good? And is it worth the extra money over the standard T7? Well, in this video, we'll go through everything that I've found out from riding this bike for the past week to find out. But before we get started, I just want to say a massive thanks to today's video sponsor, and that's Louis Moto. I'm wearing their Vannucci VAJ-1 jacket in the riding footage on this video, and to me it looks the absolute business on the bike, as well as having the reassurance of abrasion resistance and armour. Plus, on top of that, you've got the option of accessorizing it with a collar or a thermal liner or a membrane liner, and so you really can customize this jacket for all different sorts of riding conditions. You see, alongside all of the big name brands that you'd expect on a site like Louis Moto, they also carry a bunch of their own product lineups, which I think represent really very good value for money. And it's not only the clothing and gear like this, but also they've got accessories and parts and tools like this mini 31-piece tool roll from their Rothewald brand. And this has got Allen keys, hex keys, ratchets and pliers, so pretty much everything you need to get back on the road if you did encounter a minor mechanical. Genuinely, they've got a great selection of products on their site at all different price points, and so do check out the link down in the description to find out more. And I should mention they also ship to the UK and they offer fast shipping. So once again, a massive thanks to Louis Moto for their support, and with that, let's get stuck into this bike. Now, there are pretty much 5 key things that separate this bike from the standard T7, so let's go through each of them and I'll tell you whether I think they're any good. The first one is the seat height. You see, they've taken out 20mm of travel from the fork, so that brings it down to 190, I believe, versus the 210 of the standard bike. And then there's 20mm out of the shock as well, so that's 180 now as opposed to 200. Naturally, you're going to sacrifice a little bit of ground clearance and also some off-road ability, but the positive side of it is the seat height now comes down by 15mm to 860. 875mm is really on the tall side, and for a lot of riders that's pretty much going to rule out the T7, but for someone like me at 5'9" or 175 centimeters, 860 is doable, and it does mean with this very narrow rally style slender off-road looking seat that you can get both feet down on tiptoes without having to move across the saddle. If you want to firmly plant a foot, then you're still going to have to get your bum over to one side, but like I say, it's such a narrow seat that it really does make it quite easy. 875 for the standard bike as well, that's pretty much the lowest they used to offer, and bikes like the World Raid or the Extreme with that extra travel in the suspension sat still taller than that. So this is a great option if you're on the shorter side, or I guess you could fit the low accessory seat or the lower in linkages for the shock on the rear on the standard bike, but both have their drawbacks. The low seat's gonna of course bring the seat closer to the pegs and close up that knee angle, and I guess if you just do the linkage on the shock, you're gonna have to drop the forks through the yokes to get the bike to sit level again. This, however, you know, it's all done for you straight from Yamaha. Now, another one is the windscreen. This is the tall touring windscreen, which is part of the accessories catalogue for the standard bike, but it normally costs you an extra 120 quid. Now, it's 50% bigger in terms of surface area than the standard screen on the normal T7, and so as you can imagine, out on the motorway it is significantly improved, and for me at 5'9", it's just below my chin, so it keeps the majority of the wind off your body and leaves you just looking over the top. Combined with the handguards, which are standard fit as well, you know, it's a reasonable wind protection package, although I wouldn't say it's got a particularly wide body, this bike, so you don't get a great deal of protection on the knees. And also, it is worth flagging up that this screen isn't adjustable, which you will see on some competitor bikes. That means you can get it dialed in for your exact height, and also push it down to get it out the way if you're riding off road and standing up, or if it's dirty and you want to look straight at the road ahead. But still, all things considered, this is much better on the motorway, and like I say, it's included as standard as opposed to having to pay 120 quid. Now down here we've got the same CP2 parallel twin as the standard bike, so it makes about 72 horsepower. It's a dependable workhorse, very versatile, torquey in the low revs, so it's good for the off-road side of things as well. And also it's got a great note at the exhaust. But the thing that's specifically different about the Explorer Edition is that it does get their quick shifter, which I think is 184 quid as standard, and so it means you can experience a little bit more sportiness and fun under those aggressive accelerations. And I should point out, it only works on the upshift, as opposed to both the upshift and the downshift where it would auto blip. Now perhaps that is reflected in the price. I think 184 quid is a little cheaper than something like the quick shifter from Triumph for their 660 lineup, but that one does work up and down the box, and so I guess it's a case of you get what you pay for. Either way, on this particular bike, as I say, it's standard, and while I wouldn't say it's an absolute necessity for me on a touring bike or an adventure bike, it is a nice little thing to play with, an extra fun feature which is bundled in as standard in this Explore package. Now, something I would consider more or less an essential for a touring bike anyway is luggage. And while this bike, you don't get the hard luggage as standard, that's about 900 quid, you do get the racks, which are about 350, and so that helps with some of the cost of fitting it out with this sort of setup. There is also the option of some soft Yamaha luggage, which you can get through the dealer, but I think when I looked on the configurator on their website, that came in at over 700 quid. Then you had another 30 or so quid for an adapter kit to fit the soft luggage, and so really for just over £100 more, personally, I'll be taking the hard luggage, especially if you're just riding on the road where you're not going to care so much about the extra weight. The other one with the Tenere Explore is the paint job and the graphics. So there isn't a blue version of this bike. You can only get the Tech Camo, which is a sort of very dark khaki green. But what you do get is the specific graphics. So whereas the Tech Camo version of the standard bike gets an orange stripe, this one gets a bright yellow stripe and also the little Explore logo at the top there. Now, probably not a massive consideration for a lot of people thinking about buying this bike, but for me, I think it does look quite nice. This is still a brilliant looking bike, despite not having been visually updated for quite a while now. And personally, I really do like adventure bikes in a sort of khaki green color, and also with the hard luggage, I think it looks the complete package. So with regards to whether it's worth it versus the standard bike, well, this one starts at £10,806, and that's 690 more than the standard T7 at 10,116. Now I've added up what I think it'd cost to do all these mods from the accessories catalogue. So 357 quid for the seat stays. You could fit a low seat accessory at 190. The high windscreen is 120, as I've mentioned, and then also you've got 184 quid for the quick shifter, so that's £851 in total, and given that it's 690 more than the standard bike, that sort of represents a saving of around £161. So purely from a numerical perspective, if you were already thinking of fitting all these mods to the standard bike, then this is absolutely worth it. It's not a huge difference, admittedly, but it all helps, especially when you're buying a new bike. So that's the is it worth it question sort of ticked off, but the other one I asked was whether it turns it into a bit of an adventure tourer. And what I will say is this is still very much an off-road focused spec. You've got that big 21-inch wheel at the front, spoked, it runs inner tubes, you've got semi-knobbly tyres, it's still pretty tall as well despite having that slightly lower suspension, and so for me this really does handle in the majority like an off-road biased bike. Then you've got the comfort levels which are decent, it's spacious enough, but like I say, you don't have an adjustable screen. The grips are quite thin and have that sort of dirt bike feel to them, and also the seat is very narrow. It almost looks like a rally style or dirt bike seat, and so you have to shuffle back a bit to get a reasonable amount of cushioning. It's certainly not as wide and tractor-like as something like a big adventure bike, or even some of the middleweights like V-Strom 800, KTM 790, the Transalp. I think they all have slightly more cushy seats. The other thing that I think is really missing from this bike, if you were going to do big miles on it, and this is true as well of a lot of the competition, is cruise control. It's just the one thing that I wish I had if I was sitting on the motorway for hours on end trying to get those miles done. So yes, from a money perspective, this is a good deal if you wanted to fit all those accessories anyway, but as for whether it transforms it into a sort of adventure tourer, look, if you're going to buy one, I think I'd set your expectations by saying it's firmly still at the more off-roady end of the spectrum, but maybe just shifted a little bit more towards the roadside than the standard bike. As always, I'd love to know what you think of it, so do let me know down in the comments below. And also, I'll put on the screen now my comparison of the standard bike with the excellent World Raid, which I shot, as I said, at the Adventure Experience last year, so you can give it a click and give it a watch in case you haven't already. Also, hit subscribe as well if you've not, to see more of the latest motorcycle reviews like this right here on YouTube. Many thanks for watching today, and we'll see you in the next video.